Use the Force, Luke. With great power comes great responsibility.
Just keep swimming. These iconic lines from some of our favorite movies do more than just entertain. They teach valuable life lessons and help navigate challenges by distilling complex concepts into something easily understandable. I'm Jodie Sweetin, your host for Awkward Conversations, where each week we aim to give parents practical advice on raising happy, healthy, substance-free kids who are empowered to make smart choices. Today we're exploring how art, music, dance, and other things I love, and creative activities can help build resilience in our kids, allowing them to face life's ups and downs with strength and confidence. We'll also discuss how you can use pop culture and storytelling as teaching moments, making those important conversations not so awkward. So please join us as we dive into the magic of movies and the power of creativity, and discover how they can be incredible tools for teaching our children essential life skills. Stick around because this episode is packed with insights, fun discussions, and practical advice you won't want to miss. And of course, joining me today is Amy McCarthy from Boston Children's Hospital. Hi, Amy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Always a pleasure to have you here on Awkward Conversations.
Super excited to have another one. John Lawler is an award-winning director, writer, co-founder of 2 nonprofits, and principal of 2 nationally recognized arts high schools, and is now the CEO of PS Arts, which helps bring art programs to underserved LAUSD schools. John, welcome to our show.
Hi, it's great to be here. Hi, Jodie.
Hi.
Dr. Steve Schlozman is the Chief of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry and the Medical Director of the Vermont Center for Children, Youth, and Families at the University of Vermont Medical Center. He is also an Associate Professor of Psychiatry and Pediatrics at the University of Vermont Medical School. Steve has adored pop culture since he was about 4 years old, and he often integrates popular culture into his teaching and has written articles and books on its use in psychiatry and child psychiatry. In addition, he has authored 2 novels and numerous short stories, with his first novel optioned for film by George Romeo. Most importantly, Steve loves sharing popular culture, sports, and classic rock with his mostly receptive daughters and wife. He lives outside of Burlington, Vermont, with his wife and 2 ill-behaved dogs. Hi, Steve. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I have so many things that I know we're really excited to talk to you about as somebody who is obviously passionate about the arts and creativity. I know what a huge impact that the arts can have on not only creating healthy, whole children and young adults, but also in preventing substance use and abuse. So, John, I would love to hear you talk a little bit about some of your experience in arts education and leadership, and how you came to be working in the field of creating arts education for children.
Great. Yeah, it was a very circuitous path to end up here. So I started as an artist. I went to an acting conservatory. From there, started a theater in Seattle, moved on to get my MFA in directing at UCLA, moved to New York, and then I was a freelance director for most of my life, and worked there in London and so on. So really a practitioner, and not thinking I would teach a little bit, but mostly as a sort of a side piece to what the main job I was doing. And I moved out to Los Angeles to work in film and television, of course, and it just didn't work out, and I wasn't having much fun. And I got invited to a friend's class who was teaching English to middle school kids in a public school. And he invited me and said, why don't you go ahead and do some theater games with them? And I started doing some improvisational games. And the kids were so charming, and they threw themselves into it. And I'd been working with professional actors, and I was kind of like, they can be difficult at times. And these kids were fantastic. And he said, you should start teaching. You're a natural at this. So I did. And at the time, it was very easy to get a teaching job. So I got a degree or a credential really quickly and started teaching film and television. I loved that, and got really into education as for the whole child. So arts, but what are all the other pieces that are important? From there, I had an opportunity after a few years to actually propose a school, an art school, to LAUSD, and it was a sort of a competitive process for a building, for a space that had been built, and we won. So we opened up a space in San Fernando, in the Valley, in a very sort of difficult neighborhood with a lot of challenges and kids with a lot of challenges behind academically. Not a lot of arts going on in the area and arts opportunities for kids. And the only thing we did, I think that was different than other schools, is offer a lot of arts classes. And we had 5 different disciplines, and kids came in gang related, a lot of sort of academic problems, learning disabilities. And our only thing we said is you have to get into one of these art forms and take it seriously. And they did. And what we saw was their very low performing academic test scores and so on for several years started to creep up. And then pretty soon it took off to the point that we were outperforming most of LAUSD schools. And again, this is not in a fancy neighborhood. This was not with the quote unquote best kids. This was with kids who had a lot of challenges outside of school and in school. And our attendance rates were great. Like all of the different sort of key things, there was a 0% suspension rate. All of those key indicators just showed that an arts education really is transformative for kids, and that put it in practice.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, what we see so often today is that arts education is one of the first things that gets pulled or cut with budget issues and things like that. And what we know, I got my undergrad degree in elementary education, so I'm always passionate about teaching. Arts education absolutely improves across the board. Yeah. Everything, not only academically, but like you said, suspension rates, mental health rates, everything. Attendance, yeah, all of it. Dr. Schlozman, I'd love to hear some of your insights on this, obviously as a psychiatrist and a mental health professional. What are some of the things that you see the benefits of arts education across the board?
Everything. I mean, so first of all, it was really inspiring to hear John's history there. It is absolutely the case that this is not expensive to increase arts education, and it is the silliest thing on earth for us to cut. So if I'm allowed to make a political statement, and I don't think I'm really going out on a limb here, like we need this raises everything. Kids do better overall. Test scores go up. Most importantly, they feel better. Their mental health gets better. And we know this from all sorts of really cool empirical studies. We know this from animal studies, believe it or not. It was like a cool study with rats where I didn't do this study because you have to sacrifice the rats, and I would feel guilty about that. But you
we appreciate
have 3 cells of rats. I think it was done at the Yale Child Study Center. The first group, they're just thrown in a cage. Nothing in the cage. The second group, they're in a maze, and then the third group, they're in like a cage with cool stuff in it, like novel things they can play, basically a playground. So it's kind of like an open art studio, that third one. And then they look at where there's the most neuronal development, and the most, as you might expect, there was more in the maze than in the empty cage. A bunch of bored rats are a lot like a bunch of bored humans. Not much goes on in their brains. But if you move into that cool cage, that novel cage, then you actually get really, really high levels of brain development, increased arborization, which means that multiple neurons are connecting to multiple neurons, increased ability to think in the abstract. And we see that when we expose kids to arts in all forms, basically. I mean, I'm privy to movies and TV shows. That's because what I like and what I grew up loving, and books. But it's really any form of artistic expression leads to an overall increase of measurable brain development and a decrease in suffering for kids.
Now, one of the things that we always talk about in, using creativity as a form of self-expression is that it is not the end result. We're not worried about kids becoming, the next great modern artist or painter or sculptor. It's just about doing it and enjoying it, doing it and being creative, doing it and, like you said, finding something novel, something that makes your brain go, ooh, that's different, that's new. And what are some of the ways that parents or caregivers or teachers can really simply and easily introduce the ideas of arts education and creativity into, sort of their daily activities?
First of all, it's really important, there's been a lot of writing around parallel play, kids having parallel play with each other, but with adults too, and with their caregivers, I think it's really important to do art together, to have it just be a way to pass time, and not have it have a lot of learning objectives necessarily. But I think the more that kids get into art and making things, they want to know how to make it better. And that's the best motivators for them to self-regulate and say, I can do this, but I want to get better and better at it. and sort of finding ways to do that and letting them sort of tell you what they want to learn and providing those opportunities. And certainly exposure to arts, being able to go to museums, galleries, plays, dances, everything, and then just asking them about their response to it, I think is much more powerful than trying to teach them too much. When they ask, that's a good teachable moment. But I like to ask them, like, what did you think of that? What was their favorite part? What was weird to you? Why do you think it was weird? And those are the questions I think that get kids, again, really thinking and making connections and building those branches that the doctor's talking about. So as many opportunities as you can find yourself with your kids, but also outside of the home, to be able to have those opportunities are really beneficial.
Absolutely. And so many museums and cultural centers and places within the community have free museum days, community participation. There's all sorts of things and different ways that you can get involved in arts and arts creation, whether it's at your local museum or, if you happen to live in a big city and you can, go to your local, MOCA center, fantastic. But there is art really everywhere. And it's just a matter of plugging yourself in and finding it. What would you say are some of the top results of arts education that we see, particularly in young people?
I think it's, a lot of studies have been done around this, but one of the things that's really important is that kids find a sense of agency when they feel accomplished at something. And they find something because particularly in adolescence, it's such a self-seeking, self-identifying time in their life, and they need something to hang on to that has a positive quality to it. And being an artist, and whether it's performing or visual arts, is hugely that. It's something that very often they think their friends can't do, or because they haven't put as much effort into it or haven't had the opportunities. But that when they discover that they're good at something, it really builds resilience. It really builds a sense of community with the people that they work with and collaborate with. I think it's some of the outcomes in terms of kids wanting to go to school, having a positive experience of school. And this is one of those pieces I think it's not talked about enough, is the sort of ripple effects of having arts education in a school, because it really affects the whole community. Because you have parents and family coming to see a kid's performance, see their exhibits, see the work that their kids are working on, which is very empowering. And to really have an opportunity for that kid to be the center of attention and be recognized for something that's hard to do, that they worked very hard on, put a lot into. And then I always say to kids, like, it's fun not because we're goofing around. It's fun because we're working hard and we achieved something we didn't think we could do.
Yeah. I mean, as a performer and entertainer who has been doing this since I was 3 years old, I absolutely agree. There is something that happens when you connect with another human being through an artistic, creative way that just, it's unlike any other type of communal experience, whether it's between the people that you're creating with or between yourself and the audience. It really is, there's a touch of magic there. And I think that sense of awe and wonder and creativity really does just massive amounts for making us feel connected and part of community.
It ties back to what we talk a lot about throughout the podcast, which is it helps young people make smart decisions and smart choices. The sense of self, the resiliency factor, the being connected, are all things that are protective factors to prevent substance misuse as well.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I always try to proselytize about to parents who think that investing time in arts education is going to take away from their academic life. And what I've tracked and done my own studies with is the fact that colleges understand that kids who really study arts at more than sort of a cursory level, but really go into it, are the kids that they're seeking. And this is not just in the arts fields. So, I was the principal of a very high performing, very similar to your school, Jodie. So LA County High School for the Arts, kids have to audition to get in. Top outcomes, they go to the best conservatories, but about 20 to 30% of the kids go to non-arts schools in non-arts majors, and they get into all of the best schools. They have typically very often lower GPAs than the school like that would normally expect, and lower test scores. So what's getting them in? It's exactly that. The kids who come through arts learning, have a deep arts education, have shown and demonstrated grit, dedication to something. They have the ability to communicate with peers, to think outside of sort of standard ways of thinking. They're interesting in a class. So I think, if there's a message I have for parents is it's going to increase their chances of getting better outcomes and better colleges.
I think, unfortunately, arts is seen as sort of the dispensable thing in so much of education, that it's quote unquote the fun stuff or it's just the drawing and creative and not the things that are necessary to make you a productive working human. But, much to Dr. Schlozman's point, that innovative thinking, creativity, that idea of making unique and interesting connections across, brain hemispheres and thinking of new ways to solve problems is exactly why colleges want to see artistic, young, creative people.
And, we've talked a lot about helping kids get into college. I also think a lot of the young people I work with, sometimes college is not their goal. And all of the things, though, that we're talking about apply to just, progress and positive outcomes in life, no matter if you choose to go to college or follow kind of a vocational path. Leadership, problem solving, communication skills, connection with others, it kind of goes across the board, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Those skills are we used to think of them as the 21st century skills, or the soft skills, are really the key skills I think everybody needs to learn no matter what field they go into, because first of all, almost everything that is sort of a college degree requirement for a career still involves technology, still involves creative thinking, working with people, managing people. So the kids who have that experience through their arts learning will be able to translate that into any career that they choose.
Yeah, that's that sense of self, that sense of purpose, and you have an entire new skill set, to offer to the world, which is really, really cool.
I would also say that one of the things that we talk a lot about on here that helps, with prevention of substance misuse and things like that is the idea of empathy. And I would say that arts education, creativity really helps pull out those ideas of empathy, of connection, of understanding someone else's point of view, and really incorporating that into being a fully functioning member of society, not just worrying about the things that are going to make your career or make you money, but really, how do I connect with the world at large? Welcome back to Awkward Conversations, and welcome to Season 5. I'm Jodie Sweetin, and this is Awkward Conversations, where each week we work to give parents the tools they need to raise happy, healthy, substance-free kids. It's Season 5 of Awkward Conversations. Let's get into it.
I think maybe we try to scare kids into not using illegal substances. But today, we equip them with the tools to make really good choices. We've gone from just say no to just say no, KNOW.
Now you can download a short animated explainer for kids 6 to 9, so you can watch it together and start the conversation.
And now each episode comes with a parent guide with simple tips to use before, during, and after viewing, plus ways to adapt the same lessons for older kids and teens.
And this is just one topic. Each week, you'll also find new explainers and guides on sleep, nutrition, tech safety, peer pressure, mindfulness, and more. Visit GetSmartAboutDrugs.com to access the full library of explainers and guides and every episode of Awkward Conversations.
It's Season 5 of Awkward Conversations. Let's get into it. Dr. Schlozman, one of the things that we have been talking about, obviously, is how we encourage young people to create art and to, use it as a form of creative expression. But I would love to hear how parents can use, films and books and other media in the ways that you do to teach some life lessons and build that resilience that arts education provides.
Sure. Before I even answer that, I want to point out that in addition to all of the benefits of art that you all just mentioned, it also is really good for communities. And there's really, really cool empirically driven evidence. The Royal College of Music has done these studies. These are like community battles of the band, like high school kids playing music. Not only do those kids do better on standardized assessments in terms of mental health, they actually are more immunocompetent. If you measure like cytokines in their saliva, they fight off illnesses better. Community cohesion, it's not a surprise, right? Like humans are pack animals. We want to be together. And these are the things that, since we have existed as humans, have brought us together. So how does that happen in the household? Like we're in our house. This is like the golden era for art in the household, because you've got so many opportunities. The internet may have brought us some lousy stuff, but it's brought us some pretty amazing stuff too. One of the most amazing things is you can pull up almost any scene that you remember watching fondly when you were a kid, and here there's probably a bit of a caveat. You should probably check it out before you show it to your little kid first.
See if you remember it the same.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, you might kind of not remember it exactly as it went down. And that's okay too. It's grist for the mill afterwards with the kids. But movie nights with your family, with your kids, super important. There's evidence to support it, and it's not like we need studies to support it. In my own experience, my daughters were now 18 and 24, but we had with my younger daughter, who's a little bit more laid back, a little more chill, we had something we called inappropriate movie night. And it wasn't, they wouldn't care, like it was the Austin Powers movies. It was, what else? Coneheads. We watched that because I'm old, you know, so I remember all these things. With the older one, who's a little bit more intense, she and I remember this. We really got into Firefly, the Joss Whedon show.
Yeah.
It was awesome. We ended up watching it over and over again. She and I still sing the song to each other. And I also remember watching Shawshank Redemption with her. She said, I want to watch one of your very favorite movies. I think Shawshank just had its 25th anniversary.
25th or 30th. Yeah, something like that. I just saw that. Yeah. Great movie.
Yeah, so I mean, hugely. It's a great film. It was a great short story. I think it's called The Redemption of Rita Hayworth, the short story by King. I remember both of those so fondly, and I remember it's not just sharing this thing that had a lot of meaning for me with my kid, but it was the discussions afterwards. And what y'all are saying is absolutely right. You're not telling them. This isn't an opportunity for you to say, here's why this is a good movie. This is a chance for you to say, what'd you think? Did you like it? Did you not like it? And also, you know, as a parent, sometimes they're not going to like what you like, but that's interesting too. Like my daughter was so unamused by E.T. And I remember
mine too. I took mine to go see it, and I was living my just best, like, I was like, E.T., and my kids were like, this is so boring. Yeah.
Devastating.
That's so funny. My dad, you know when his head gets up really, his neck grows really long? My daughter said, that is so fake.
Special effects have come a long way.
Right, it's true.
It has. And you know what? That's okay too, right? Because we remember that moment fondly together. So there's the connectedness, which, you know, quite apart from whatever discussions, whatever learning moments you have, just that sense of connection makes possible further discussions downstream about different issues. The other thing, though, that happens is movies especially are telling stories about the world that we know. They're in displacement, and it's a whole lot easier to talk about difficult things in displacement than it is to talk about them directly. So instead of saying, do you think it was a good idea, you know, Billy, that you did this, you say, hey, do you think it was a really good idea for them to walk on that train track like they did in Stand By Me? Why was that a bad idea? Those kinds of discussions are right at our fingertips as parents. Just the magic of the internet.
One of the things that we also want to differentiate between is the idea of co-viewing and then also monitoring the content that your kids are watching. What are some of the ways that you can figure out not only age appropriateness, but also, you know, child appropriateness? So
it's a hard one. You know, it was easier when I was a kid because there were 3 major networks, and maybe you could, if you turn the dial just right, you could get the UHF channel. That's different, right? There's a bazillion things. You can watch them whenever you want. So I want to first express just kind of empathy with the parents who are, with all of the right reasons, trying to keep their eye on this stuff. And there's an awful lot of stuff that can, you know, come across our screens that just wasn't there as recently as even a decade and a half ago. So it's hard. There are some general rules. One is don't ever force your kid to watch something they don't want to watch. And also to the extent that you can be aware of what your kid is seeing when they're seeing it, and that means putting a screen in a public space. They're still going to sneak a screen, even if you don't allow it. They're going to get a screen into their bedroom. But it's important for you to make the effort, especially when they're little kids, to have that computer in some place where they can all watch it, and then knowing kind of what kids are able to do at different developmental stages. So younger kids think much more concretely. As kids sort of start to get older, they start to think more in the abstract. That empathy you were referring to is sometimes called recursive thinking. It's I know that he knows that she knows. It's being able to kind of put yourself in somebody else's shoes and say, I don't think that, but that person thinks that, and that's okay for that person to think that. We're allowed to disagree on that. That comes with literally with the onset of adolescence, and we know that from looking at brain development studies. So you know that generally, but then not more importantly, but as importantly, you should know your kids. So each kid is going to be really different. And knowing that about your kid, listening to what they like and listening to what they don't like, and then taking part in those things with them, that's really fun, first of all, but it's also super important for building those bonds that lead to, healthy kids and healthy parenting, and also, more fun as a family.
And that changes from kid to kid, from year to year. And it is definitely something that you have to kind of keep up with. As kids age, they are ready for more and more complex and interesting conversations about, like you said, I know that they know that, whatever. But the age appropriateness, I think, is something that really parents need to be able to determine for their own kids.
And speaking of age appropriateness, I have to remind myself of this as a therapist all the time. As an adult, my verbal skills, hopefully, fingers crossed, are a little bit more advanced than the young people that I'm working with. And so I think as adults, often we're like, let's talk. And they're like,
I don't want to listen to you anymore.
Yeah. They're just like, please stop talking. Right. But also, sometimes we're expecting them to meet us to describe these feelings and emotions and experiences that they're going through that young people just don't have the words for. And so these creative outlets, whether again it's like movies and television, or fine arts and theater or drawing, these are opportunities where we can encourage and teach young people to foster these skills so that they have additional outlets and ways to talk to us and tell us what's going on in their lives.
Steve, what are some ways that as parents we can determine, age appropriateness and maybe what our kids are ready for?
Figuring out what's right for your kids is not easy for anybody right now. It's gotten actually harder because kids are exposed to so much more in ways that we actually, we parents just can't possibly stay on top of. There's just too much going on out there, but you still know your kid. Best of all. First of all, something about the individual child, and then kind of what's best for the individual child at a specific age. So if something is way into the abstract, it's not going to work for a kid who hasn't yet entered their adolescence, because we know that actually adolescent brains are when you start to be able to engage in abstract thinking. It's just not gonna work for them. My older daughter loved the movie Chocolat when and I'm probably saying that wrong, when she was teeny. And at first we were like, we have a genius daughter who's understanding this fairly complex movie with Johnny Depp as the gypsy. And it's like, no, she got a kick out of all the chocolate they were eating. That kind of recognition, we didn't ask her, why do you like this movie? She just wanted to watch it. And as you pointed out, Amy, she didn't have the words to say why she wanted to watch it. She was barely had any words at all. She just got a kick out of the chocolate and the nice looking people running around the screen. So it's paying attention to what the kids kind of zero in on. And also, if you start watching something and your kid says, turn it off, this is not your hill to die on. This is not where you want to say, no, we're going to watch this. You're really going to love it. Just stick with it. Turn it off. There's other things you're going to make them do. Not that.
Yeah, but when fourth grade, they made me watch The Witches. No offense, Roald Dahl. To this day,
that's a terrifying
traumatized by that experience. So
one of my favorite Roald Dahl books, but a terrifying
movie.
Turn
it off. No.
So another really great resource is a website called Common Sense Media, which I'm sure folks have seen. If they haven't, I strongly encourage you to look it up. It's one of my very favorite go-tos for just a pretty high-level overview of what you're going to see. You type in the name of the title of whatever it is you're going to watch, and they have video games on there now too, so you can type in a video game, and then it says, look, here's the content. There might be some things that will have sentences like, this might be a little bit difficult for some younger kids who have a harder time with, say, something more graphic, but other people it might be okay. They give it an overall score, and then they leave it up to the parents based on their qualitative description to determine whether it's appropriate for their kid or not.
Now, I know we've really focused a lot on sort of television and movies, particularly in media discussions that we've been having, but I'm an avid reader, and books have always been something for me that were really, really important. What are some of the other avenues and ways of creative expression that, might not pop into our head because we're so used to thinking of a screen, as some sort of creative outlet.
So reading is huge. I wanted to be a writer since I was 4, and I wanted to be a physician since I was like 27, and my dad made me. I love them both. I'm delighted to be a doctor, so I don't want to give the impression that I'm not. And I also am delighted I get to write. You start reading your kids early, reading, when they're on your lap, you're reading picture books. The breadth of picture books out there is really impressive. In the beginning, you pick them out, but at a certain point, there's this wonderful time you can go to the library and your kids say, I want this, 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 and this. And you rely on your library to sort of vet the books. And so it feels pretty safe. And you can come home with these books and you figure out in this really neat way what your kid's into, which is actually not maybe what you're into, but that's even more special because then you get to say, hey, my kid's this like growing independent person with that agency that's so important to foster. You can write stories with your kids. You can draw with your kids. We used to do this thing where we would fold a piece of paper into 3 parts, and like I would draw the head, my kids would draw the torso, and then I would draw the legs, or vice versa. I've done that in the office too with patients. I mean, this is not like rocket science. And the great part of this is that it's like a surprise to everybody. You unfold it, and you're like, oh, look what we've created. You can laugh about it. You can name it. So there were some really fairly easy, not expensive at all ways to engage in the act of creativity. And like we've stressed, creativity it's a human thing. It comes naturally to us. It's hard for us not to go there. So all we got to do is put the ingredients in place and then add a little bit of energy to the system, and you start making stuff.
Yeah. I would also add in music. I think I became a social worker, so I did not become the pop star that I intended to as a small child in my car or a karaoke maybe sometimes. But I think probably my choice of music, like at certain points, probably cued in my mom and dad about like, was I having a bad day? Was I having a good day? And again, sometimes I couldn't express to my family maybe how I was feeling during difficult moments, but I could like scream out a ballad and like, oh my God, I felt so much better. And so music, I think, is another, really important form of expression for young people.
So huge. I would love to hear some last thoughts from each of you. Dr. Schlozman, what are some things that you would really love for parents and viewers, caretakers, teachers even watching this show to know about the importance of creativity and education in substance use prevention and just building whole, happy children?
I would say the most important thing is to not underestimate the potency of this tool. This comes naturally to our brains. This is something we all deeply want to engage in. For us to ignore it is to ignore it at our own peril. Our kids don't grow up as happy or as healthy. Our families aren't as happy or as healthy. It's not pricey. It doesn't take that much time. You put your phone away, you engage in this activity together. It creates memories that come back years and years and years later, and it leads to healthier brain development. So it's hard to find, there isn't a downside here. There are only upsides. And if I can go a little bit out on a limb here, it is silly for us as a nation to start cutting funding on this. We have a mental health crisis right now. This is one of the fixes.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that'll make it better.
Yeah. I hope people really, really, really hear that, with everything that's going on with young people right now, arts, education, and creativity is really the thing that can help bring us back from this. John, I would love to hear a little bit about PS Arts and how people can support it and support arts education in their areas.
Absolutely. Yeah. PS Arts was founded about 30 years ago. It was actually an independent school founder, Paul Cummins, who was having a conversation about the local school near his independent school on the west side of Los Angeles, a lot of affluence, a lot of arts in that school. And he was bemoaning the fact that the public school had none. And just saw the inequity in that. And one of the people who happened to have a conversation with him at this event was Herb Alpert. And he said, we're going to change that. And so they focused on that one school, about 250 kids, in providing a teaching artist, quality lessons and so on, really thoughtful approach to teaching arts education. And then that has grown over the 30 plus years to now representing and serving about 30,000 kids across LA and the rest of California. So we do programs in schools where this is sometimes the only arts program they have is Our Teacher, Our Curriculum. It's got a lot of social emotional learning built into the curriculum, a lot of social justice issues. It's culturally very relevant. We always use as samples, instead of the Western canon artists, we'll use artists from the community and feature their work. So it's a really rich, engaging piece, and it's a very welcoming environment. And that's the thing I think that's really critical that we're talking about, is that it's not only transformative for kids, it's transformative for communities. And that can be a school community, but very often the school community is the hub of their community. And so it's a place where parents and people come together to celebrate their children, and this is something to celebrate. It's their artwork. People who want to help out and learn more about what we should do should go to our website. It's psarts.org. There's a button to donate if you want to support us, but I encourage people to look through and see the different programs we have and how we serve kids.
Fantastic. And those links and websites will obviously be in our show notes with all kinds of other information on where you can find arts education and how to include arts in your child's life and in your life, because it's super important and it's so fun and enjoyable, and it makes you feel a little bit better about the world if you can be creative and enjoy it for a little bit. John, Steve, what's the one sentence of the most important thing that our families can take away?
This is where I feel compelled to try to do the Vulcan salute, which I can't do. They should live long and prosper through the arts, which I know is corny, but I really believe it.
I'd have to say I think arts education is sort of the most transformative and powerful tool we have to work with kids and communities.
Fantastic. And Steve, I would love to hear you give us a plug or anything, information where we can find where you are, websites that you'd like to recommend.
Sure. So I'm at the University of Vermont, which is an awesome place, by the way. And anybody who's watching is welcome to come up on visit. There's only 650,000 people in this whole state, so we got room. You can come. It's gorgeous. If you look at the website for the University of Vermont and the Vermont Center for Children, Youth, and Families, that's where you'll see more details on the work that we do here. And it's a very holistic treatment approach. My personal writing, there's a website called The Zombie Autopsies. That was the book that Romero optioned. You're welcome to visit that. It was a fun book to write. I still got to write a sequel at some point. I think there's other places too, but that's a pretty good start.
You'll be able to find all that information that Steve just mentioned and all of the wonderful information that we've shared today on our episode in our show notes.
And I want to thank you both for joining us today. And I just want to emphasize the importance of arts education and the fun of being creative and how it creates whole, happy people.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on. It's been great.
First of all, just thanks for doing this topic. And thanks everybody for working on it. And let me know how I can be helpful.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Awkward Conversations. See you next time.
That's it for today's episode of Awkward Conversations. I'm Jodie Sweetin. I'll see you next time. Some days, it feels like the whole world is on fire, and we're the adults trying to keep it together. Now imagine what that feels like for a kid. From scary headlines to unsettling events in their schools or neighborhoods, our children are absorbing it all, and it can take a toll. In fact, research shows that kids exposed to community-wide trauma are twice as likely to experience anxiety, depression, and risky behaviors in the months that follow.
The worry about the event actually is worse than the event itself. And so, in other words, the event happens, it's horrible, but then the people who get through it, thankfully, it's on their minds all the time. And certainly, I'm sure it's the case. I've read some of the studies on the wildfires in Los Angeles and also just around the country. It's scary.
I think it's extremely important that we are honest with our children, that these kinds of events happen. What is not useful is for parents to think that they can protect their children from learning about these kinds of tragedies. It's just ubiquitous. There's just no way to avoid it. And so I think it's really important that parents recognize that they need to have open communication about these kinds of tragedies.
Returning kids to where they need to be developmentally as is appropriate for the way they were before the event. You can't do it perfectly, but that's the goal.
Make sure to check out GetSmartAboutDrugs.com
parents, caregivers. You can find so many resources of great information there about how to talk to your kids and make these conversations a little less awkward. A huge thank you to the Elks DAP, which is the largest all-volunteer nationwide drug awareness program, and also a huge thanks to the DEA for their outreach program and for making this possible.
The views, information, or opinions expressed during the Awkward Conversation series are solely those of the individuals, speakers, commentators, experts, and/or hosts involved, and do not necessarily reflect nor represent those of the production, associates, or broadcaster, or any of its employees. Production is not responsible and does not verify for accuracy any of the information contained in the series available for viewing. The primary purpose of this series is to educate and inform. This series does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. This series is available for private, non-commercial use only. The production, broadcaster, or its channel cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed during this program.